Good Sunday, Austin. Welcome to Living Wealthy Radio with your host, Teresa Kuhn.
Good afternoon. You're listening to Living Wealthy Radio, heard every Sunday at noon here on Talk Radio 1370 AM, streaming live at talk1370.com. I am Teresa Kuhn, helping you live wealthier. Resources are available for you at livingwealthyradio.com. Darrel Rundus is the founder and former CEO of the world's largest newspaper circulation sales and marketing firm, Circulation Promotions Unlimited. He's been on various TV shows and radio talk shows and a speaker at many major events. Self-made entrepreneur and millionaire who never graduated from high school and has trained thousands of people to effectively approach and communicate with the public and make the most out of this life. We're going to start the show by introducing the beginning of a conversation that we had, and which I think you'll find very, very intriguing. You know, I've got my practice, and I do the show as because I believe wealth is much more than just money, right? And so it's more of a lifestyle show.
In fact, money, I think, is a byproduct of living that wealthy life.
Exactly.
You know, it's more of the result. It's not the actual arbitrator of wealth. In fact, it's interesting because the Bible talks a lot about wisdom and how wisdom's the principal thing. And, of course, these days it seems like we run into a whole lot more people with a lot of zeal but very little wisdom. And yet the key to finding that wisdom, the Bible says, is teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. And so when we start to realize that we need to make the most of every given day that we're blessed with, right? The old saying that today, what was yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, all we have is the present, and that's why it's a gift,
right.
Today's a gift, that's why we call it the present, or something to that effect. And it's very true. You know, when people start to make the most of every given moment and the opportunities they have, whether it be in business or with their friends or with family or to serve the community or what have you, they'll really start to gain a heart of wisdom and start to understand how fleeting our lives really are.
And they are so fleeting. Just ask the people in the Philippines this weekend.
In fact, it's funny. I must have interviewed 20,000, 30,000 people in my years of running my own business. And one of the best things about being in the newspaper business was we got a free ad in the paper to hire salespeople. So we would get these free, big, giant quarter-page ads, in the newspaper, and we'd get thousands of calls and hundreds of interviews. Every time we'd start up a new market with a new newspaper, we'd perpetually run that ad till we found the good people we were looking for. Well, one of the questions that we would ask on the interview was fairly perplexing to people, but it was also very telling, and that was, when you die, how do you want to be remembered? And it's funny, I must have asked that question, I don't even know, like I said, 20,000 times, and no one had ever asked me that question until one day at a sales meeting, one of the reps said, Darrel, how about you? How do you want to be remembered? And it didn't even take me but a second. It just kind of came out of my mouth, and I guess that's just my overarching life's philosophy, if you will, and that is I want to be remembered, of course, as a loving husband and a good father and all the normal things that everybody else would say. But beyond that, I would just like to know that I had a positive and a profound impact on other people's lives. And, of course, I get that from Dale Carnegie, years ago. Might have been even Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich, who said that if you want to be successful, you got to help other people be successful. And the more you help other people reach their full potential, the more you'll get what you want. And that's just kind of always been my life's philosophy is how can I help other people reach their full potential?
You bring up a really good point, Darrel, and I have a question that's a little off, but as a Christian, there are those that believe that the thinking and the philosophies of the Dale Carnegies and the Napoleon Hills are not that type of reading or thinking that Christians should adhere to, or even the type of philosophy that we should.
I hate to interrupt, but I would have to beg to differ in that, one, they were all Christians, especially Og Mandino, and it was probably a mentor to Dale Carnegie, Napoleon Hill, and the likes, or at least, kind of in that same boat with them. The Bible talks about money thousands of times, so, it's important. Sure, the love of money might be the root of all evil, but as long as we don't break the 10th commandment and covet, then money can be a very powerful and useful resource, and why I believe the Bible speaks so prominently about money, because it is probably God's closest competitor, right? You can't love both God and money, so it's love God like money, I guess. But in truth, I think money is kind of a measure of someone's commitment to their work ethic and their ideals and their morals and their values. Now, what they do with the money will also be, carried out in the long run through their morals and ideals and values. Like all the money we have, we use it commonly to bless other ministries and organizations and missions and, just all kinds of things. And so I think at that point, what your worldview is will dictate how you spend your money and what you do with that money. But all too often today, I think the thing that people aspire to have is money, and they love money, and they'll do whatever they can to get money, and therefore, unfortunately, a lot of times they make fatal mistakes, and they ultimately don't make money, and in fact lose money because they are coveting the money. And so in essence, if you just look at like my once again, my life's mission or my overall business objective was not to make a lot of money, not to sell a lot of newspapers, not to do really anything other than be the very best at what I do, because I don't know anybody who's the best at what they do, the best doctors, the best lawyers, the best insurance people, the best radio people. It doesn't matter. If they're the best at what they do, they'll be in high demand, and they'll also make a lot of money. It just kind of comes with the territory. Ask the top-ranked celebrity if they're making a lot of money. Of course they are, but I don't think they go into it with the idea that, hey, I'm going to make a lot of money. If you do that, I think your motive's wrong, because even if you are fortunate enough to make a lot of money, your motivation then is lost once you have the money. And so you got to find something that's far-reaching and far deeper than the money itself, and even what the money gets you, fortune, luxury, cars, houses, whatever. Don't focus on those things. If you really want to be successful, focus on two predominant things. Be the very best at what you do, whether it's tying your shoe or kissing your wife. Do it the best you can, and be the best at it. And that calls for hard work, determination, self-sacrifice, and so on. And the other is help other people reach their full potential. I think if your focus is on yourself and what you're going to gain, all those characteristics that come from our sin nature will manifest themselves, and you'll start to say and do things you wished you wouldn't have said or done out of greed, and which takes you down a road you don't want to go down.
So, Darrel, you didn't graduate from high school, yet you've been so successful in business. Tell me why you didn't graduate from high school.
Well, it wasn't because I wasn't smart. It was because, like many kids still to this day, maybe even more so to this day, I was just bored. And the curriculum and the pace by which things were taught just left me sleeping in class. And so I left school my junior year and joined up with a magazine crew, traveled around, went door to door, knocking on doors, selling magazines. We've all had those kids knock on our door, going to win some trip somewhere. All you got to do is buy a magazine and give them some points. And I placed first in the nation for a year straight and won a couple trips, and it was great because it gave me what I didn't get from school. It helped me develop my God-given gift of gab, even in second grade. They had everybody in the classroom stand up and just talk into the thin air. You couldn't talk to anybody else but just talk, and you'll never guess who won that contest. But, so I was kind of blessed with the gift of gab, but at the same time, the magazine crew really, it's much like joining the military. They brainwash you not necessarily to become a soldier, but to become a salesman. So it was eat, sleep, drink, think positive all the time, get your quota, get the sales goal, win the contest, et cetera, et cetera. And that was the foundation for what led me later in life to go on and to do so many other things successfully. I think we all have got to have that foundation of discipline and hard work and sacrifice, without which you're not going to get very far.
And how did you come up with your newspaper subscription business model?
Well, it's kind of interesting, and it's a great example for all those people out there who are looking for something better out of life, who maybe want to run their own business, but they just don't know what it is. They don't want the overhead, the investment, the risk that go so commonly associated with running your own business. I had a guy living next door to me. I was selling for ADT security systems, and I was doing okay. This was back in the 80s, and so I was making 35, 40 grand a year and doing okay. And he was this guy. His name was Waco. He had a stutter, so even when he introduced himself, he'd say, "Hey, I'm Waco." And the guy was making a couple $1,000s a week, taking kids around in a van selling subscriptions to the Houston Chronicle. And
door to door?
I said, "Man, this." I said, "Yeah, let me just ride around in the van with you and see if I can do this," having gone door to door for 2 years selling magazines. So I went with him one night, outsold everybody in the van, and the next day went down to the Houston Chronicle, and unbeknownst to me, they actually had an ad in the paper to hire contractors to sell subscriptions to go in door to door. And so I got a contract, and I was about 3 kids into it, and I was about to buy a van and take that next step when it dawned on me, there's a better way to do this. You don't have to take kids door to door, and you don't have to bug people at home on the phone. What if we do what I used to do in the magazine business? One of my most the funnest ways to sell magazines was what we call stemming, where you'd walk around in the parking lots of grocery stores and malls and kind of stop people as they came and went. And nowadays in Texas, you might get shot if you walk up to a stranger like that. No, I'm just kidding. But I thought, well, I wonder if we sat up in front of the grocery stores and we buy gift certificates from the stores who are constantly having contests to see how many gift cards, in this case back then it was gift certificates, and perhaps they'd be interested in letting us buy a couple $1,000s worth of gift certificates and set up a table out front and give them away to people as they walk in when they subscribe to the paper. So I approached a local grocery store. They said, yeah, give it a shot. And I guess, like they say, the rest is history. We started in Houston with a card table and a handwritten sign and a few dollars in our pocket to buy some gift certificates, and just kind of expanded from there, perfected it, wrote a manual, came up with some easy fundamental steps on how to sell subscriptions in the retail and grocery stores. So I think it's a great example for people that, look, you don't have to. I didn't invent the newspaper. I didn't own the paper. I didn't produce the newspaper. I didn't distribute the newspaper. I didn't do the customer service for the subscriptions that we sold. We just found a better way to do it. So you don't necessarily have to come up with a new product or a new even concept. You just got to find a better way to do it. And it comes back to my overall, once again, kind of business philosophy, and that is be the best at what I do. So I've always just been one of those guys saying, wow, there's a better way to do it.
And you couldn't get an easier business model or a simpler business model. And apparently you had contracts all over the country.
Well, yes, we started in Houston, and by the time I was done selling the company in 2009 for, I won't disclose the price because of the non-disclosure, but for several $1 million, we basically had worked for every major newspaper in America, between the LA Times, New York Times, Washington Post, and, hundreds of papers you probably never even heard of. So it was what every business model has to be if it's going to be successful, and that is a win-win-win or a mutually beneficial situation, in that the newspapers, obviously, they need their subscribers. Most people don't realize this. They think, oh, how could you make any money selling a newspaper subscription? But newspapers, much like any publication, makes their money in advertising. Much like a radio show. It's free to get the signal on your radio. Radio shows don't make money on the airtime. In fact, it costs them time to broadcast. How they make their money is through advertising. And so in the same way, newspapers, like sell a $20 subscription and get paid $40. And people, kind of leaves them scratching their head. How could you get paid more than what you actually sold the product for? And that was because the newspaper needs subscribers to see those ads in order to justify the cost of those ads. And so once again, we weren't doing anything new, really. We were just finding a better way to do it. And, it was mutually beneficial because the stores created sales off the purchase of those gift cards. By the time we were done, not only did we sell the company, for millions of dollars, but we had created tens of millions of dollars in sales for the likes of Walmart and Target and Safeway and every other major retail and grocery stores, where we would set up our kiosk inside the store. And then when people would come and go, the salespeople loved it because they didn't have to telemarket. They didn't have to cold call. They got to utilize the traffic flow of the people coming in and out of the store. And, of course, the consumer likes it because, once again, you're not bugging them at home. And when you walk into a retail or grocery store, you're kind of expecting, if not open to, some promotional thing going on. So much like Sam's, does taste testing, of different products and things like that, demoing is an age-old concept. We just kind of took it to a new place.
And while you were running this business, you also had other businesses going.
Well, we've done a lot of different things over the years. One thing happened along the way, and ultimately why I did sell my company, it wasn't because I wanted to cash out. I didn't want to do it anymore or anything like that. About a little over 10 years ago now, God just got a hold of my heart. And I wasn't looking for Jesus. He was the last thing on my list. As far as I was concerned, people would approach me saying, well, God's got this wonderful plan for your life. And, I always believed in God, but I would have told you Jesus, if he even existed, was probably a good prophet or a teacher or, some historical figure. But Son of God, risen from the dead, no thanks. But God, and that's a whole other story, and it could take the rest of the show. So God just got a hold of my heart one day on an Easter Sunday that I went to church on a promise I made my wife and radically changed it on the spot, kind of a Saul to Paul situation, only instead of the road of Damascus, I was on the road of success. I had everything the world had to offer, great wife, great kids, plenty of money, famous friends, could go anywhere in the world, 6,000 square foot house with everything you could ever imagine in it. So the last thing I was looking for was Jesus. But once God got a hold of my heart, one of the telltale signs of someone who's truly had an encounter with Christ isn't really much of the outward stuff as it is what he does inside someone's heart. And once God changes a person's heart, then everything else will change afterwards. And so about a year after God got a hold of my heart, I partnered up with Ray Comfort and Kirk Cameron, who a lot of people know from, Left Behind movies and Fireproof, and, of course, Mike Seaver from Growing Pains and stuff as a kid. So they had a TV show called The Way of the Master where they teach people to share their faith. And so I kind of partnered with them, and we did what we call Evangelism Boot Camp. And we would take people who watch their shows out on the streets and teach them how to approach people and share the gospel with them. So that kind of morphed into doing what we are doing now today in what we call Prayer Stop. And it's much like with the newspapers. We wanted to create a turnkey outreach solution for churches that was non-offensive and yet biblically sound. And so we created these little professionally printed full-color kiosks that people, along with our training DVD, can set up in the public square and approach people. Hey, we're getting people to stop and pray. What could we pray for you about today? And we kind of teach them how to kind of go from the natural into the spiritual and share the gospel to make it as simple and as easy and as biblical and as effective as possible.
Speaking of the Bible, share with us a little bit about what God and Jesus talk about when it comes to money. And let's dig deep on money because, Living Wealthy Financial is my practice, and it's about wealth. And there's so much that the Bible and God says about money.
Well, absolutely. And I think that, once again, God's chief competitor is money, and perhaps that's why the Bible speaks so much about money. And that's why I think if we're not careful, money can become our all-consuming passion. And I know there's probably people out there saying, well, Darrel, that's easy for you to say, you're a multimillionaire. You already got a lot of money, But no, honestly, I think money is a measure of your hard work, your determination, your sacrifice, and so on. It's not so much the money as it is what are you going to do with it if God should bless you with it. So I'm, one of those guys where every answer you get from me is pretty much going to be coming straight from what God's Word says. Everything else will take a distant second to it. So I don't love money, and I'll make that clear right now. What I do love is helping other people. And by helping other people, if it helps me make money, or I get, people find that value in that, and therefore, they pay me money, then so be it. It's just like the newspaper business. I didn't go into it thinking, I want to make a lot of money. I went into it thinking, how can I teach other people how to start their own business without the overhead, the investment, or the risk? And how can I help them utilize the traffic flow in these stores? How can I help the stores? How can I help the newspaper? I mean, the fundamental basic business principle that they teach at Harvard Business School is find a need and fill it. And I think that's where you start, as you say, okay, is there a need for this? And if you do that and you do it well, you're going to make money. I mean, that's, once again, just a byproduct of hard work, determination, commitment, self-sacrifice. There's really no substitute for hard work. So I think depending on people's morals, values, their standards, their ideals, their worldview, if you will, that'll determine how they go about making the money as well as what they do with the money. But for me, in my house, we serve the Lord.
So what are people's, you think, biggest misconception when it comes to money in the Bible and poverty and debt?
I think the name it, claim it crowd.
Okay.
For lack of a better word, today you see a lot of televangelists on TV, saying, hey, give me $10,000 to my ministry and God will give you 10 times that back. They speak as if they're oracles for God, but in essence, they're just charlatans. And I think that's a huge misconception that a lot of people, as you may or may not be aware of, we produced and aired a very successful television show called Prayer Stop, same name as our ministry. And, never on that show will you hear us ask for a donation or ask for money or what have you. And one of the things that we'll do is kind of go do the man on the street interviews. And in one of those, we actually just gave people 10 words. We made sure they weren't Christians. In fact, most of them are atheists, didn't even believe in God. And we just gave them 10 words that were kind of Christian words, like Bible, God, Jesus, and so on. And then the 10th one was Christian. And we just did word association. We said, hey, just say the first thing that comes to your mind. And we said God, Bible, Jesus, so on. And when we got to Christian, believe it or not, I believe some 88%, 84%, somewhere in the 80s, all responded with the same one-word answer. Do you know what it was?
No, I do not.
Hypocrite. And I think that's the biggest misconception, and it stems from shows like those that are constantly trying to push their books, their CDs, their DVD, instead of just sharing the Word of God and the truth of God and doing it because they love the Lord Jesus Christ who saved them, and freely they've received, so freely they give. Instead, they're constantly trying to get money from people, and I think the big misconception is that's not Christian. That's not what is representative of a true Christ follower, aka Christian.
Well, what did Gandhi say?
In the modern American church, we've got a lot of pretenders, not contenders. I like to call them fans. Jesus had a lot of fans in his day, but very few followers. And I think still to this day, especially in the modern American church, we have a lot of fans, but very few followers.
Well, it was Gandhi who said, I like your Christ. I do not like your Christians.
Yeah,
so
and I think that's the biggest misconception right there is that, people look to and I did this myself before God got a hold of my heart and radically changed me. My thought was, my first example of a Christian, as an example, was my father who left when I was 4. And never paid child support, and yet he was a pastor who left my mom for another woman. So that was my very first example of what a Christian was. So it kind of left a bad taste in my mouth, needless to say. And unfortunately, carried that through to my first marriage, where I married a girl who was raised a Southern Baptist and yet was the most angry, bitter, hateful. Praise God, God finally got her really saved, and now she's changed. But, back then, I was like, wow, if this is what a Christian is, that's the last thing I want to be. And I think what people forget is what Gandhi was saying, in essence, is that I don't look to the Christian look to Christ.
Absolutely.
And the Christian is a hypocrite. And if we weren't out doing, for lack of a better way of putting it, friendship evangelism, where we're constantly telling people, hey, come over to my house and check out my blessings and how God's, look at my marriage, look at my job, look at my money, look at my this. We keep people focused on the Christian, and when they ultimately trip or stumble or say or do something as the imperfect person that they are, the world looks at that and says, aha, see, you're not better than me. You're like everybody else. And the truth is, Christians are like everybody else. So you shouldn't be sharing the message that, hey, come, follow Jesus and he'll improve your life. Because the truth of it is, they're going to have trials still. They're going to have tribulations still. They're going to have, a lot of problems. In fact, Jesus says becoming a Christian may make your life more difficult in that you may lose friends and risk relationships and so on. So ideally, what we ought to be sharing is the truth. And the truth is, you don't come to Christ for a better life. You come to Christ to be saved from your sin, and that we're all sinners, saved by grace, if you'll just turn from your sin and turn to Christ. In fact, the directions to heaven are very, very simple. You just take a U-turn towards Christ and then go straight.
Go straight. If you're just now joining us, we're speaking with self-made millionaire Darrel Rundus about taking life by the horns, getting out there, building wealth and relationships. He has successfully built and sold a multi-million-dollar business from the ground up. He's now launching a new business. And in addition to his unique ministry ideas, he believes that God wants us to be financially creative and successful by serving others. So tell us about that new business.
Well, it is new, dynamic, creative, innovative, exciting, and something that I'm going to give the general masses a chance to get in on. It's what we call butterflyers. And I know nobody's ever heard of butterflyers and nobody's ever seen them, but once they see them, they're going to love them. Have you, Teresa, had the opportunity to kind of go to our Facebook page or any of that stuff and see what these things are?
Well, I checked out your website, and very interesting. Tell us about it.
Well, basically, it's a product I came into contact with, 10 years ago, and decided to put it on the shelf and move on to other things, which I'm glad I did. And now, having sold my business and done the TV show, and our ministry's doing well, and it's kind of on cruise control, and one of our other projects that was on our goal list was to build a house, and so we've built our house, and we've completed that. So I'd been sitting around just praying, asking God, what's that next thing, what is it you'd have me do? And one thing kind of led to another, and before you know it, I'm in the butterflyer business, and it's the coolest, most innovative, creative product I've ever seen. Basically, it's as simple as this. If the listeners could just picture a 2-inch paper clip in their mind's eye, and attached to the edges of that paper clip are 4 paper wings shaped to look like a butterfly. Now, those wings can look any way you want them to look. They can look like a monarch butterfly. They could say happy birthday with a bunch of birthday cakes and balloons. They could, be camouflaged. They could have flames. They could have happy anniversary, Merry Christmas, whatever you want to print on them, okay? And, of course, we carry standard models for every occasion, whether it's holidays or birthdays or anniversaries or what have you. But the trick is, in the middle of that paper clip, attached to the top 2 wings, is a rubber band where you wind up the top 2 wings, and then you stick it in a greeting card, a CD case, a book, a magazine, or anything else you can imagine. And that way, when people open it up, what do you think happens?
The butterfly flies out.
It flies out. And it is the coolest thing. First they scream, then they laugh. It's fun, and it's basically like selling a smile. So of all the things I've ever sold or promoted or advertised or marketed, it is got every characteristic of any product you'd ever want to have. And in fact, I equated a lot to the first iPhones. When they first came out, everybody wanted to see if somebody had an iPhone. They were like, hey, is that one of those new iPhones? Let me see that. And people also couldn't wait to show it to other people. Well, as it turns out, this little inexpensive, they retail for about $2.50, less than the cost of a greeting card. is something that people want to show other people. And what I mean by that is, like, for an example, when one was first sent to me years ago, it came in an autographed copy of a book that a friend of mine wrote. Well, my wife opens the mail, and so the butterfly comes flying out on her. And what do you think the next thing she wanted to do was? Wind it up, put it in the book, and give it to me. And so it's a self-perpetuating kind of product. It's one of those cool, novelty, inexpensive items, and because it can be custom printed to say anything they want, people can use them for promotional purposes. They can promote their product, their business, their service, their special offer, whatever it is. They can have them custom printed to say whatever they want. And so kind of like our tagline, if you will, is instead of maybe sending out those old boring Christmas cards this year, people can literally make their message fly.
And it makes you smile just looking at it. It just makes you smile.
It's bright. It's light. And the other thing that God's blessed us, so I didn't really need to. In fact, of the short list of things I was praying about, kind of hopeful of what God would lead me to next, the last thing on my list was start a new business for a lot of reasons. One, the political climate and the taxation, Obamacare, just a lot of those complications that are there now that maybe weren't there in the past. And of course, when you've kind of been there, done that, and paid your dues, and it's like, man, I don't want to once more into the breach kind of thing. I don't want to go do what I know I'm going to have to do in, once again, hard work, determination, sacrifice, and so on. All the hours and preparation alone that I've already put in just getting this thing to bring to market. So, I wasn't really looking forward to that. But I tell you the truth, of all the products I've ever promoted, this one is the funnest. It's the easiest to sell. People will either like them or they love them. I've never had anybody get one of these and say, oh, that stinks, or oh, that's not too cool, or whatever. But this time around, they say you're the sum of your total experience. Well, in my case, I definitely believe that's true. And so I'm taking all the things I've learned in ministry as well as in business, and I'm thinking, well, how can I be a blessing to other people with this butterflyer thing? What can we do to help other people reach their full potential while we endeavor to do our best? So we came up with a system so simple, so clever, it's going to blow your mind and make it so easy for other people to make money doing this. I think it's going to revolutionize the way people do multi-level marketing. We've taken all the best of multi-level marketing and networking and left the pyramid, if you will, aside. So instead of it being your typical internet multi-level marketing, business model, where most of the time they get people to buy their products and they ultimately never make any money. What we've done is design this system by integrating age-old principles with some, 21st century technology. And in a nutshell, it basically works like this, and people can go to butterflyers.com and check it out and read all about what it means to be a dealer. But we've decided we would give everybody, once they fill an application and you're approved, and we're not just giving it to anybody. Ultimately, we'll probably have a couple thousand dealers around the country. But let's say, Teresa, you signed up and you qualified and you became a dealer, okay? These butterflies are something that you're going to want to give away to other people anyways, in your Christmas cards or, just as, in the salon or, wherever you go, whatever you do at the school or whatever. And then when people love them, what you can do is, as a dealer, is to say, hey, yeah, check it out. The website's right here if you want one. This one's mine. You can't have it. But if you want one, go to the website and order one. By the way, if you buy in bulk, use this code. You'll save 40 to 60% off. And then the people don't realize you're going to get a commission off of that, and this is what makes it so innovative and kind of creative, where you don't really sell the product. All you do is share the product with other people. Spring the flyer on it, wind it up, put it in a book, a card, or whatever, let it come flying out, show them how it works, and when they fall in love with it and they want one, just tell them when they order, write the code down for them or write it on a little free flyer that you give to them or whatever. And when people make that purchase and they enter that code, not only will they get 40 to 60% off, you get a commission every single time they buy a flyer. So it's very passive and it's residual income, but it's not a multi-tiered, multi-level marketing thing where it's dependent on you going out and getting tons and tons of people under you selling for you. It's just you sharing a really cool, creative, innovative product with other people that's inexpensive so everybody can afford them. And perhaps maybe, do you have kids?
I do. I have a 17-year-old Boy.
Okay, so you've probably been through the whole school fundraising type of thing, right?
Oh, sure.
So let's say you're at the fundraising thing for the local school band or the booster club or the football team or, whatever it is, and you show them this butterfly. And you say, hey, instead of selling cookie dough this year or Christmas wrapping paper in July, why don't we sell these butterflies? With this code, we can get 40 to 60% off if we buy in bulk, and we can double our money and sell a product everybody loves. And since it's new, there's no competition. Everybody's already got all this other stuff. Let's sell something creative and new. And guess what? The administrator, the principal, whoever makes that decision says, yeah, let's buy a couple thousand flyers and sell for, $2.50 or $3 a piece. We only paid $1 a piece for them. So therefore they double or triple their money, which, speaking of investments, man, if I told you right now by the end of this weekend you could double or triple your money, you would think that was a fantastic investment, especially with minimum overhead investment or risk. So let's say the school goes out and sells them, and they use that code when they purchased them. Not only are you helping the school raise funds, doing something fun the kids will like, that grandparents like, that aunts and uncles and friends and classmates will like, but you're also getting 15 cents on every single one of those flyers every time they buy. And when it works for them, guess what they do for the next fundraiser? They get butterflies again. And so whether it be in retail stores, whether it be affiliate websites, whether it be, maybe some small mom and pop type of convenience stores or a greeting card store or toy stores or, the possibilities and the applications of this product are practically endless. So, maybe like one of my favorite bookstores is Mardell's, the Christian bookstore, and I've already talked to them, and they're going to start carrying it in their stores. So if I was a dealer and I showed it to the manager and he's like, wow, that's great, where can I get those? You don't have to purchase them as the dealer. You don't have to distribute them. You don't have to deal with the customer service. I've set this up so that people can do what I did in the paper business. Right? It wasn't my product. I didn't invent it. I didn't make it. I didn't manufacture it. I didn't buy it. I didn't have to deal with the customer service or the complaints or distribution or any of it. I just sold the subscription and got paid. Same thing that we're doing with the butterflies, only we've kind of upped it with technology where you just give out your code, and then once you're logged in, you can see who's used your code.
Perfect.
And I don't know if Tracy, you ever buy anything online?
All the time.
And when you go to buy something online, do you check for a discount code to see if there's a code for that product?
I always do. Yep.
You do, don't you?
Before,
and so if somebody has their code, let's say you have DLR001 or whatever your code is, and you get that in your Facebook and you share it with your friends and other people like that. All they got to do when they go to the store to buy their flyer is enter that code, and you'll get paid. And so it's, once again, very simple, straightforward, no risk, no investment way for a lot of people to make a lot of money. And the
very
great
innovative
thing about these butterflies is they're like Lay's potato chips. It's never enough.
When is never enough. Darrel, it's been great talking with you today. It's so inspiring to see how, one man, you, went a different route, shrugged off conventional wisdom, and you're still coming up with new ideas and new ways to get the most out of life. And of course, the show is all about living wealthy. And today we've seen how you can live wealthy in your relationships and your communications and even your financial decisions. So Darrel, thank you again for joining us today. And we will post a broadcast of this show on our website, livingwealthyradio.com, along with the websites butterflyers.com and your other website, prayerstop.org. Is that correct?
Perfect. Yeah, that'd be great.
And again, thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. We thank God for you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you so much, Darrel. Take good care. God bless.
You too.
This presentation is for educational and informational purposes only. The info being presented does not consider your particular financial objectives or situation and does not make personalized recommendations. This material is not